Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Wiesenfeld here again from Toronto. Excited to talk with Frank some more sports like we did, I guess, a few weeks back. Lots of exciting news, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays of late. The NHL season has kicked off since we last spoke, although I don't think we're going to talk that much. Hopefully the Raptors are going to start turning things around, because for a while they were the best, 4-8 team in the history of the NBA. But yeah, Frank, how are you?
I'm doing well, Matt. Just so you know, this is the second show I've done from Toronto today. Or I've done from Las Vegas talking to someone from Toronto. So you have to hold up your end of Toronto for this part of the show. Um, but we didn't cover on the other part. We covered the Raptors on the other part. We're going to talk a little of the blockbuster that's come up this week that I didn't see coming. I don't know exactly the reasoning behind it. I would have thought that the gentleman would have been happy where he was, but again, there's a lot of upheaval in Toronto's or in Houston. I'm sorry. So George Springer comes to the Blue Jays. Is that a yay, or it's like that's pretty cool?
It's all of the above. So we are, here north of the border, we're super excited. I'm going to, speak personally. Like, I think George Springer is a fantastic player. Obviously, he can do lots of wonderful things on a ball field. I think it's even, better for the team, for the Jays, that they've not only gotten a super talented player, but a guy who's done it during the regular season, done it during the playoffs. That's where we want to get back to. And center field is a spot that's been pretty vacant for a while on this team. We had last year, I guess Randall Grichuk was the center fielder. Most people think he's a corner outfielder. I'm trying to remember the last time we had someone out there who we really thought was a great all-around player. Even on the recent teams that we had in 2015, 2016, that was not a spot on the field, with all due respect to my main man, Superman. The defensive player, I'm drawing a total blank on him right now. But he wasn't much of a hitter. Shoot, why am I drawing a total blank on his name while it's being recorded? It's terrible. But yes, but Springer, as far as the rumor mill goes, I think since it felt like there was a good chance he was not going back to Houston, Toronto had been up there with the Mets as a potential landing spot. I don't know how much the sort of, I guess, the changes that the Mets have been forced to make in their front office most recently, how much that made or didn't make a difference. Who knows? Because at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to dollars and cents, and right. He's getting so there was a lot of excitement too, because we thought we were getting Brantley.
Right.
There's not a lot of details as to why that kind of fell through at the seemingly last minute, especially given that Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins are familiar with Brantley because he's a former Cleveland guy.
Right.
So right. I can't imagine that it was maybe anything other than just dollars at the end of the day. Maybe there was a few million that Houston was able to do, especially once they knew for sure they weren't getting Springer back. Because my impression of Springer, like from everything that we saw from where I am here, it didn't seem like Houston was really in the running. That was not what I was reading online or whatever. But maybe Houston might have seen that a little bit differently. So once the deal finally went down and they knew for sure they weren't getting him, maybe that's when a few extra bucks for Brantley kind of opened up. But there's a lot of excitement. Now I think we should get another ex-Cleveland player, and his name is Trevor Bauer. 2 year. My suggestion is 2 years, $60 million. It's a lot, but there's no, an ace at the top of the Jays staff would maybe make them the best team in the American League.
Mm-hmm. Or pretty close to it, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was chatting with a friend of mine the other day. MLB.com put out their a ranking of all the teams, and it was certainly pre-Springer. It was about 2 weeks ago, and they had the Jays 9th in baseball, and I thought that was kind of high. Mm-hmm. Not because I'm not all. the challengers in the AL are kind of interesting. Like the Jays have sort of quickly positioned themselves to be almost playoff or bust at this point.
Well, I think what they've done, and I'll go back a second here. I think what happened to Houston is a victim of their own success, because now you've got to pay Altuve. You paid Correa. I believe you already paid Altuve. So, and Verlander and this and that, and you brought in other guys, and your payroll keeps going up and up and up. And Springer, though maybe the most important player on the team, or one of the most important players on the team, you couldn't afford him. You just couldn't afford. You couldn't afford everybody. You had to make a decision on who you're going to keep and who you're going to let go, and that's a tough thing to do. But they've got it down to a science. Okay, it's a 6-year deal. He's played so many years. Blah 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 blah. He's playing there. We've got to let him go. You got your middle infield already set, so that's something you don't really want to mess with. But again, middle of the diamond, you've got a center fielder. You might want to keep him there. But okay. Now, the Brantley part of it, I think, is exactly the same thing, what you said. We got a couple extra dollars left over, and it's a comfortability thing as well. The thing about Brantley in Cleveland was he didn't leave Cleveland before because he was comfortable. Then finally they threw more money at him and said, okay, I guess I'm going to move to Houston, but he's still comfortable there. So I don't think that he had there was a chance to pry him away from there. But you're looking at, like you said, the Blue Jays are maybe one player away, maybe 2 players away. Trevor Bauer would be great. For some odd reason, Cleveland, I'm a Indians fan, or whatever they're called now, in its cycle, they do this. They've been doing this since the 70s, as far as I can tell. We get good, and then we ship off our players. And hopefully we've got guys in the farm system that'll work. It used to be they would get good pitching, and then with no hitting. And then they would get rid of the pitching, and then the hitting would come up, they get rid of the hitting, and then the pitching. And that was the cycle. Hey, you want a Cy Young? We can trade you. You want a Cy Young? We can't afford you. Well, that's, you're looking at Kluber, you're looking at, Clevenger. We got rid of our pitching because we've got guys down on the farm we hope can do that. I don't know. But you're looking, like you said, the Blue Jays is, where do they fit in to this mix now? You've got a guy I think is in his prime, man in the middle. That's not a bad deal.
I think it's going to be really interesting, for them, because they have a lot of young, for the Jays. Sorry, they have a lot of young players who certainly have yet to hit their prime. Right. And the fact that Springer's such an established player, that he can sit at the top of that lineup, because that's also an area where the Jays don't have an obvious guy. They've tried a bunch of guys there. Springer obviously is comfortable there. He can play great defense. We're supposed to win. So anything that we're doing that's not, about winning, let's not focus on that. Let's be the team that goes on the field and wins, and we expect to win, and we do that. I think Houston's actually a really interesting case, because I don't know what they're doing for this upcoming season. Like Verlander's out for the year. Obviously Springer's no longer, part of that equation. They have, they're not, they've got a lot of still talented players, but like, that's why I think the Brantley signing was sort of interesting, because I think it's just a 2-year deal. And if they're looking at, hey, why don't we, retrench a little bit for this upcoming season when Verlander won't be there, and then maybe, do something a little bit more special once he's back and healthy, it would seem to make a bit more sense. But I guess, they made the playoffs last year without him, and, they can run their team however they want. They're not asking me for advice.
Yeah. You know what, Matt? Here's what.
Exactly.
But I think the thing with them is they have enough depth at the top of the rotation where I don't think, Verlander coming back will be a bonus, with Cole, and they've got enough depth there. But the thing with the guys they have out on the field now, Altuve's been dinged. Correa's been dinged. Brantley's been dinged. Now you start looking at, do we have enough to get the job done? Or will they be there long enough over the course of a season? And we don't know if this is going to be a regular season or it's going to be a truncated season. We don't know that yet. So you may not be able to give guys days off. Well, maybe 2 days off might be 4 games. We don't know that. So you need some, I would assume, some healthy players. And Bregman's been dinged as well. So, it could play out just depending upon health. And the scary thing about what you do as an organization is when you start putting guys out there that you count on that you can't count on.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of the Blue Jays is, they're all 12 years old. They shouldn't be, dinged up yet unless they start running into stuff, or get carted at a restaurant or something and can't get in to get in a fight. But you've got Guerrero Jr., you've got Bichette, Bijo, blah blah blah. All these kids are 22 maybe.
Yeah, they're young.
Yeah.
It's funny because Guerrero, who's always been sort of leading that pack as a prospect, is the youngest of them all. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think he might be 21, 22. Bichette's a year older than that. Biggio is a couple of years older than that. They've got a young, which again is why they're supposed to be spending money now, right? Because those guys are not earning much, and it doesn't take much. Like it's always, a young team is always a fun team, right? It's you were mentioning Cleveland. They've certainly had that time where you've got all these great young players. I'm harkening back to the Carlos Baerga, Albert Bell days where you just sort of, a few guys get it going and all of a sudden the sky's the limit. But with the Jays, they've gone, young in the field and Springer actually elevates the age a little bit and then, but more experience with the pitchers, which seems to be the right mix. And which is why, I'm going to beat that Bauer drum,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
that's not a bad deal.
The guys who are in charge here know him, more than most. So I know Bauer gets a bit of a bad rap for being a let's just say eccentric is probably the polite term for it.
That's the word, yeah.
But if he just wants to pitch and pitch well, then Toronto's a great spot for that. As much as we are a very, very big city, and I don't think the Jays are going to be playing in Toronto on opening day, it's a great spot for, if you, at least with the baseball team, maybe not so with the hockey team, but if you just want to come in, essentially play at or above expectations, you could have a really nice, comfortable feeling. When what's his name? When David Price came over in that, a few years back now, he was walking into local Starbucks. Nobody knew who he was. And he was one of the best lefties in the game, earning, 20 million or whatever it was at the time. He came in and he did his job and he, fit in with the team and then just so I can see Bauer again, essentially being in a spot where even if he is the highest paid player on the team, which he probably would be if they sign him to the kind of deal that's floated around, he would still be able to be that, bit wacky on the side because it just won't have the same media attention. Whereas if he goes to Boston or whatever, every time he's, running wind sprints in a parking lot, it's going to be a
there he is. Yeah.
Media event. Yeah. I saw him playing Frisbee with a dog and I don't understand how that fits with his training program. It's going to be, the baseball team as good as we are at, in supporting it and fan wise, it just runs on a different profile perspective than the hockey team or even the basketball team for that matter right now.
Well, it brings to mind something we were talking about off the air, that there's a certain amount of professionalism that you have to achieve. And if you're a young player, you need an example of someone to show you that. And not to say they don't have that with the front office staff and the coaching staff or whatever, but when you are with a guy that has been to the World Series, been World Series MVP, and you see that every day, even if he's not out there doing push-ups in the parking lot, you see him doing whatever he has to do, and you kind of go, that guy's been to the mountaintop. Let's follow that. So if you're looking at George Springer, you're going, wow, this is how this is done. And whether it's a great work ethic or no work ethic or whatever, you're going to latch on to what he's doing. Here's how he watches film. Here's how he studies pictures. Here's how he works in the, when we're taking BP, what's he doing? He's not over there smoking a cigar. He's out in the field shagging flies, and it just builds on that. And the one thing that Houston did was they built a culture. Now, whether you like the culture or not, I think that the baseball culture was good. The rest of it may be a little iffy, but the baseball culture was solid because that's what. And again, you're going back to the Cleveland team with Bayergan Bell and Jim Tomei and Manny Ramirez and all those guys. They built a way of doing things, of how they did it, and that's a lineup that one of the lineups I love. You go back and look at that lineup now, and you go, future Hall of Famer Jim Tomei was hitting seventh. What?
Yeah. No,
You know,
those teams were good. Like, it's one of those Indian teams, going back over the last probably 20 years, anytime they've been good, have always like punched a little bit above their weight. They've been fun teams to
yeah,
watch. I don't know. I'm not as tuned in, now that Lindor's gone and what the sort of outcome is. They should still have great pitching, and that, you know, I think, and I don't know in front of me, they're probably still a top 5 starting staff in the
yeah.
majors. So that's a great place to start. The offense is going to be probably even a bit more iffy, not knowing, what else they plan to do. But yeah, like it's, like I think Springer's going to fit well. He yeah, and I heard, not that this mattered, I don't think, for the signing. The short term expectation is that they might be playing in Florida to start the season,
Mm-hmm. Right.
because the border stuff is still tricky. Apparently, the Dunedin facility where they've done spring training for years has been upgraded over the last little while. So it's just, rather than Buffalo, where the weather can be spotty, just to put it
Be
gently,
nice, right?
March and April, that Florida might be the spot. Again, I don't know if that's good or bad for the Jays being good or bad, but it's not. I don't think it's a bad outcome until we can get into the Rogers Center later this year.
Well, let me ask you something, because this is something I'm going to have someone on that has a grasp of the new minor league configuration. But for a team that is young, meaning those guys came up through the farm system pretty quick, they were all high draft picks, and again, we have the guys, their fathers in the major league, so that accelerated their progress, I'm going to say. But and again, going back to that Indians team that we were talking about, they all came up through the farm system except for the Kenny Loft trade. Pretty much the rest of them came up through the farm system. How important is it that, or how devastating might it be to baseball in general, that the farm systems are going to change? The minor leagues, and I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I know they've gotten rid of a lot of teams, or they're getting rid of a lot of teams, and all of that good fun stuff. How tough is that going to be to build through, through guys like the Blue Jays have done, getting guys from single A on up to where you may only have, instead of, 4 or 5 or 6 teams that some franchises have, to maybe only 2 minor league teams. What will their guys slip through the cracks? Do you have to be more diligent in your scouting? What's going to have to be done? Because I'm concerned that it's going to be really different. Might be better, but it's going to be really different.
I think it's going to be kind of fascinating because, and I want to do a small plea for the old system, just because I think it was great in terms of fan access to real baseball. So in Toronto, like I've been across the border and seen AAA games in Syracuse and Rochester. Right. I actually went to a AAA All-Star game in Rochester with my dad way back when. The top prospect in that game was Alfonso Soriano. So as a reference point for anyone, and we had the second best seats in the house, and they were $9 each.
Yeah.
So the idea of this, especially for baseball, being, this timeless game and the access, the more limited access that's going to come with less teams is sort of, I think, kind of sad. I get that there's economics behind all of that too, and that sort of needs to, that the fact that things needed to be refined. Okay, the fact that we needed to just kind of gut it. I'm not sure long term whether that's going to make the most sense, but I do think the interesting thing that you talked about, and this is where we talked about Houston before, is like the notion of player development being a bit more scientific than it ever has been is kind of interesting too. Although, I think if you had the really like metrics driven organizations like Houston and maybe some others, they'd be happy to like not even have games and just put these guys on a practice field and teach them, the granular stuff and the macro stuff, and bring them up and down and sideways. It's sort of like an interesting dynamic, the fact that there isn't minor leagues at all, instead of just a group of players that you think are semi major league ready, that just are kind of like on a roster somewhere, the way that kind of like the way that they had for this past season where there weren't minor leagues, right? Like I don't know. I don't think it hastened what was happening, because that had been a movement for a while. The
Right.
major league teams did not just wake up one morning and in the pandemic era and then say, we should save some money, and the way to save it is by cutting all these minor league folks, because in the grand scheme of things, it's such a minuscule part of their budget as far as I understand it. There's still a huge cost base that's taken on locally with those teams. Baseball experience. And I think something's gonna be lost. Like I don't think players are gonna get to the majors any faster. I don't think players are gonna all of a sudden be better prepared or stick longer. There's still, it's so much nuance to the game. Like baseball is the ultimate, I would say, kind of like not read and react, but you got to keep proving yourself day by day. So you take your first at bat, they throw you a fastball and you hit it out of the park, then you don't see fastballs for a month. Right. And I don't see that changing just because there's less minor league action. And the fact that there's going to be a bunch of high quality players that won't have the kind of jobs they had before, that I think is disappointing. But I think to my mind, it really harkens to, again, this idea of like, if part of baseball's job is not just to put Major League Baseball on TV, but to have a broader culture in most cases across America where people enjoy the game, then I think that there's a potential losing out there, because lots of major league games aren't that interesting, right? Like when the Royals are in last place and they're playing the Tigers, who are also in last place, and it's June 17th, who wants to see it? I don't, that to my mind is a more fundamental question that getting rid of minor league players and minor league teams doesn't answer.
Well, you've got a game where they've got two pitchers that are dueling against each other with five plus ERAs, and it's a 1-2 game. Like, you can't hit this guy, everybody else does. Oh my goodness, So there's no offense, there's no stellar pitching. Because I think we've expanded. I'm not sure about that. We expanded so big. I had a chance to talk to Pat O'Connor. Geez, I forgot his name. Pat O'Connor 2 years ago. Pat O'Connor just retired as the commissioner of minor league baseball. And we have a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon relationship, that he knows somebody that I know somebody. He knows somebody that went to school with somebody that I went to school with. And so we had that connection. So, we were kind of texting back and forth, for a few months. Well, I'd really like to interview. Well, Frank, I'd like to be on your show, but why? It's like, he didn't come out and say, you're really nobody and I'm somebody important. Like, yeah, but I know somebody that knows who you are, who walked your neighbor's dog, So eventually we got to the point where we were able to have a conversation. And what cemented it was I met him at the baseball winter meetings here in Las Vegas. And when I say I met him, he was on, his assistant set everything up. He was on the set of Baseball Tonight. And he had time to talk to me after that. Now, I'm thinking the commissioner of minor league baseball, who is from my general area. And like I said, we have a mutual connection somewhat. He gets off the set and I'm waiting to talk to him. And this is how important minor league baseball is to people. He walks off the set, and he's, 60-year-old, 50-year-old man, whatever he is, and he's a nice guy, but he's not a rock star. He's wearing a nice suit, but he's not a rock star. He gets off the set of Baseball Tonight. He starts walking towards the assistant who I'm talking to, and he's engulfed by people. Not one or two, like dozens of people, one a piece of the commissioner of minor league baseball. He's autographing baseballs, minor league baseballs. So he's putting his autograph on top of his autograph, basically. And I'm like, wow. And I was able to walk with him from one venue to the other for 3 minutes, and it kept everybody away from us. And now I'm a rock star. You know the commissioner of minor league baseball? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Well, who are you? I was like, I'm Frank Gordon. You don't know who I am?
Exactly.
Sports Network. Yeah. So, and then we were able to set up an interview a little bit later where it actually was a sit down. He said, no cameras, just, like, wow. And that's how important minor league baseball is to people. You go to some of these towns and quote unquote, the middle of nowhere, and that's all they have. And they can say, Sandy Koufax played here. They can say that, Greg Nettles played here, or whomever, Devon White played here. And you go, wow, really? Yeah, that they hold on to that for generations. That's gone. That's going away. And that's really sad. Now, I understand the monetary part of it, but from the baseball point of view, and for those of you who don't realize that we talk off camera, this is part of the conversation we were having that kept the show from starting for about 10 minutes. That the fundamentals, as you were talking about, that aren't being taught now really might not be taught then. I go back to, we were talking about Jim Tomei. Jim Tomei hit opposite field home runs. As a left-handed batter, when he came up, he could hit the ball to left field. You have guys that there's the shift. Yep. And so what are you going to do? Well, they got 6 dudes over here. Yeah. I'm going to try and hit it between those 6 dudes. Well, what about the other side of the field where there's only 2 guys? Yeah. Would you like to lay down a bunt where there's no third baseman? Nah. Or it's not necessarily they don't want to. Metrics also say something, but they can't. And the fundamentals of baseball, hitting the cutoff man, no understanding the wheel play, all the stuff that my father taught me in 4th grade, they don't seem to know. So here's where our rant continues.
Well, I think I have to jump in for 1 second.
Sure,
for
please,
starters, I remember the name of the center fielder that I couldn't remember before. It was Kevin Pillar.
Oh, okay, right.
And is still a great defensive player. And I feel badly that I couldn't recall his name before because I was actually
Kevin Pillar.
But I think the interesting thing about the minors and the sort of the culling the number of players, and Pillar is one of these examples. There are a lot of players who become major leaguers. And Pillar is a good example. I think he was in the is the opportunity to sort of prove that you are advancing is gonna really narrow. So because there's nowhere to put you, to go from single A to high single A, whatever. If you hit double A, some guys repeat that level. Well, how can you do that when you're drafting as many players as you had before and you have nowhere to put these guys? So some of these, whether they be hot prospects, lower level prospects, whatever they are, some of these guys are going to get squeezed out before they even get a sniff of the majors. And the people in the majors could care less, because once you get to that level, you're making the big money and whatever. But it's going to be an interesting dynamic of a lot more stories, less of this Rule 5 draft stuff, but a lot more stories like the Yankees gave up on this guy when he was 19, and now all of a sudden he's 22, which is still young, and he's an all-star for a whole other team because they put him through a drill, it didn't look good, and there was nowhere to put him. Kind of thing. So it'll just be interesting, and if they have to stick with this system, with a new system for a chunk of time before we start seeing the real results, I don't think there's going to be a huge ramp up in independent baseball leagues. Even though I've read some great books about those leagues and they seem kind of fun, I've never seen a game like that up close, because there still has to be some money to put it together.
Right.
And my understanding of those leagues is as fun as they may be and as storied as they may be in some cases, they're basically like, paid hobbies, right? People
Right.
like to play. Someone's got a few bucks. If we lose $2,000 total for a season, maybe someone can absorb that. It's really not going to be starting those during, in pandemic recovery times.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, like it's going to be interesting to see, like, what's that path of players who, don't immediately show progress. Like
Well,
that.
and it's not just those guys. It's the guy like a Mike Piazza, was it 62nd round pick, which we don't even go that far down now. You look at a single A roster, and you've got the flavor of the month. You've got the guy that everyone wanted, the star, the number one pick. But you also have a ton of guys that were undrafted or very late round picks. Now, does that mean that they're all going to make it to Double A, Triple A? No, but you've eliminated a lot of those guys, and I could probably come up with a list, and I'm sure you could too, of guys that were later round picks that weren't seen, and now won't be seen, and and that I think dilutes. Part of the beauty of baseball is it's not just how well you look playing the game; it's how you play the game. You know, the difference between going 3 out of 10 and 2.5 out of 10 is a stroke. It's a heart attack. It's a half a percentage of what you're doing, or not percentage, but of what you're doing, and that could mean all the difference in the world. 100 at bats and 30 hits as opposed to 25 hits. You're from here to there. You're an elite if you're at 30 hits. You're at subpar if you're 25 hits. It's 5 hits out of 100 at bats. So how do you get those 5 hits? How do you teach people to do that? How do you get that ERA down just a bit, or your whip, or whatever we're using now? And how do you save runs? Again, we're talking about Gold Glovers and defensive players. Pilar, Devon White, Mike Trout. You're looking at guys that can patrol their position and still play a little bit of offense as well. But now you're going to run out of that. What is the difference between? What do we value more? If we play lousy defense, but we can hit, everyone averages 30 homers a game, we're good. Because now you're going to have to make choices. Are we going to be a strong defensive team, strong up the middle with great pitching, but can't score runs? Well, I don't know if you can do that anymore. Who comes cheaper? Who can you train easier? There's a lot of changes that are going to be made. And again, this is a conversation we had off the air. It's now you sacrifice some of the things that we think we should take for granted. Can you bunt? Can you hit and run? Can you take an extra base? All those things that, again, I was taught as a little kid seem to be foreign to players now. And, we won't even get into the wide receivers that can't catch thing. But but it's the concept of now, what do you do? What do you teach? Or can you teach? Now is it just performance driven? Without the minor leagues, you're teaching in the major leagues now. And now you're running the risk of, I've got guys in the majors that are not going to get it. And I'm stuck with them with a 3-year deal. Uh-oh. Well, we're stunk. There's a question in there someplace if you look for it. I'm not sure where it was, though. But
yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic that's going to, like anything else, like separate some teams. Like, in the olden days, it was, a super expansive farm system, and the teams that had a few bucks, would, pay $2,200 to some 18-year-old kid who, swung the axe at the state fair because they were going to try.
right.
And we're not in those days anymore. But it's, it's all, these things always have a way of separating the haves and the have-nots, like, or, certain team, like, are they, like, is this good or bad for the, and it's kind of things like, you can look at these things like, are they good or bad for the Yankees and Dodgers?
Right.
And I don't think they're bad for the Yankees and Dodgers. So if you're looking for parity, this is not the way that, some of the other teams that don't have the financial heft are going to all of a sudden become, more a part of the game. This doesn't help the Royals, or it doesn't help the Pirates, or it doesn't help things like that, because that's not the difference. The difference in what they spend on player development is not where, teams are graduating to that championship level. It's a part of the process, but, it doesn't help the Pirates keep players. It
Right.
doesn't, didn't help. It wouldn't have helped sign Garrett Cole to a 10-year deal, 4 years ago or whatever it happened to be. So it's going to be just another way for them to save a few bucks, in a way that is may or may not help the on-field product. And it's sort of that we're losing some of that nostalgia that goes with the game. And I still think also like organizational depth more so in baseball than other sports makes a difference. So in
Right.
Toronto, not that I'm trying to segue, like the Raptors have had so much success with their G League team and getting players to use
Exactly.
that as a platform to get to the NBA. I think that there's probably other teams that don't even think of it that way. They're just like, I guess we have a bunch of guys, they run around and we'll see if anyone's any good the next time we have training camp. But
Right.
with baseball, like it's hard to fathom a team that wouldn't at some point, injury, whatever, like course of the season, have someone from their minor league system come up and be a contributor. It's just making 2 solid starts and then right back down to the minors, or it's whiz bang defensive player who plays the last couple innings of 50 games over the course of the year and doesn't make an error. Like there's lots of different sort of roles that those players can fill. And yeah, if they're not ready, it's not, there's not enough of those players like in the system. It's not going to help the major league product, which if you listen to other people, some people say is not good enough as it is.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. One thing, or actually two things I got from that winter meeting in Las Vegas a couple years ago. One, what I got from Pat O'Connor was that, and I wasn't sure of the structure. Here's basically what he said was, we absorb the cost of the operations. We get our players from Major League Baseball. We don't stock our rosters; they stock our rosters. So any moves that are made, they're done by them. So we don't even concern ourselves really with who's playing on the field. We can't. They have the players, they have the managers, they have the coaches, they deal with that. We absorb the concessions, we absorb the ticket sales, all the marketing, all that. We do that. So we don't market the players here unless there's a guy in rehab from the Yankees that comes down. We don't market that. We market the experience. And good or bad, right or wrong, that's how they were able to survive. If you can't market the experience, you can't market the players because you don't know they're going to be there or not. So when you get rid of that affiliation, there's really, I don't know what you're going to do. The second thing that I got out of that was I was able to sit in a job fair basically of people that were trying to get into baseball, and they had guys from various different minor league franchises step up and speak. And I looked around the room at all these young people, and they were mentioning on the dais that I started from blah 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 blah, and I worked up from from Scranton. I ended up over here in Schenectady, and then I was in Mason, Georgia, and then and now I'm the assistant to the traveling secretary of the Atlanta Braves or something like that. Gone. A lot of these front office executives, the people that make the decisions, that learn to evaluate and learn to do things, and not just the executives, but the people that operate Major League Baseball, their starting point 2 levels below made. And I don't know exactly how it's going to change, but those positions are going to be eliminated. And again, that's how you learn. You start off as a 23-year-old fresh out of college, and you get a job with the Durham Bulls, and you learn from there, and you make your mistakes there, you learn your marketing there, you learn all the stuff that has to go on, because you probably have to do 17 different jobs. And then if you make it up through the levels to the major leagues, now you understand how it works. And as you said, now if that goes away, that level of professionalism of how the major leagues are run, it could take a notch down. Now, again, if we're looking at the monetary structure of it, well, you can't operate something if you can't make money on it. I get that. The pandemic has wiped out a lot of things. But hopefully they haven't said, this is the new way it's going to be, and we're no longer going to have single A, or single A and double A are going to merge or whatever. It's like, for right now, these franchises are going to be on hold. But if you're Mobile, Alabama, and that was okay, it may not have been a great money maker for the team, but that's what you did on a Tuesday night. Sorry.
Yeah. I've been like, it is really interesting when you're at a minor league game, because my experience has been that it's really not about the wins and the losses. It's just about enjoying the baseball. I was at a game, it happened to be in Syracuse a couple summers back, and you could tell that they, the people who were there, like the regulars that were there, I assume they were probably season ticket holders, they just want to watch 2 hours of baseball. And if 2 hours of baseball gives them to the 5th inning or the 9th inning, they really don't sort of, I don't say they don't care, but like they're getting their fill. And so they would just kind of leave. And I was like, where's everyone going? Because we were just in town for one night and we wanted to maximize the experience. And it's like, I'm going to come back tomorrow. So, we're like nobody's getting rich off watching a AAA championship. I want my team to win, but really I go to the ballpark. I bring my kids, I bring my wife, I bring my husband, whatever it happens to be. And they watch 2 hours of the game and then they come back the next night and do it. It's a totally different experience. Like, again, partly price, partly, these communities that they're in, like in baseball, like I go to not a ton of Jays games, but in a normal year, we might go like 4 or 5 times, maybe more in a given night. Like half the people that are there are people there who have like do it once a year, and they're like everything's in the experience, like because of the cost of it. They travel, they might live an hour outside the city, like whatever it happens to be. And I think that that's the same probably at most major league ballparks, and same would go for other sports too, where it becomes so much about like how do we like squeeze every inch out of the experience. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's just something also nice about, hey, this thing is in my community. I go, I enjoy, I buy a beer and a slice of pizza or peanuts or whatever it happens to be. I support the team. Like, you see like kids playing down the third base. Like it's just got everything that it should be. That if our only experience with professional sports is professional sports at the highest level, then it becomes, an interesting dynamic for all sports for that matter.
I think it becomes and I went to a few minor league games when I was actually out of college and starting to work what was supposed to be an actual job in Columbus with the Columbus Clippers, who were a Yankees affiliate at that time. And it was a stressless experience. You didn't have to worry about parking. We parked almost on the field, it felt like, because there weren't a ton of people there. It was a AAA game, and they'd won the International League like 3 out of the last 5 years or something like that, and they had on the walls the Yankees, the future Yankees that have played there, and it was good baseball, but it was just like, go sit down. We got walk up tickets, and we're sitting behind the dugout, or actually closer than the dugout to the field. General seating pretty much. Well, you guys are going to sit there? Yeah. You want to warm up? We need a pitcher. Oh, sure. Why not? You ready to pinch hit? That's what it felt like, and it was just a stressless environment. And in this day and age, when we've got a lot of stress in our lives, that's not such a bad thing to have. And though I've never been to a single A or double A game, I can imagine it's even more like that. Just come out, enjoy the game. We're going to have the T-shirt cannon out here. We're going to try and sell you some stuff. You look like you need season tickets. That's about all the stress there's going to be. You've had too many beers. Get the hell out of here. That kind of thing. That's about as much stress. Well, who's going to carry that? These 3 guys will help you get home. It's okay. And then the little businesses that pop up around there, the little pizza place, maybe a souvenir stand, that kind of thing. And again, I was going to say Americana. You're in Canada, but the same basic kind of concept of just hang out and enjoy yourself without there being a lot of pressure to it. I don't see that in the NBA. I've seen some of the G League games, and they're trying to market this like it's an NBA game, but the NBA is playing 5 miles down the street. Why wouldn't you make this a different experience? Chicago's got their G League team in the same town. The Knicks, I believe, have their G League team in the same town. It's like, and it's like 5 minutes away. It's like, why wouldn't I just go watch the NBA team? Especially if we're trying to make it the same thing. What I love about hockey, you've got teams or communities in Canada and some in the United States, but most in Canada, it's like, we could care less if anyone ever sees an NHL game. This is hockey. This is what this town is about. We've got kids that grew up here playing on this team. They may get to the NHL, they may not, but this is the experience. And I think we miss that about sports. Our rants and our raves and shows like this that we focus on who's going to win the Super Bowl. Well, did you go and enjoy the game? Well, no, because my team lost. I'm a Browns fan and have been for decades, most of my life, actually almost all my life. And I know Browns fans that are like, we got out coached. It's like, well, yeah, you had a second year, first year coach. You think that maybe the guy that they went against might have been a better coach or more experienced coach? Well, we got out coached. Yeah, okay. He's learning how to do the job. Be happy with the fact they got as far as they did. Can't do that. You know, it's it's the same thing happened with Ohio State. As an Ohio State fan, Ryan Day got out coached by Nick Saban. Most everybody gets out coached by Nick Saban. That's a shock.
Yeah.
What do you want? He's again, it's his second year with the franchise or with the school. Let him get his feet wet a little bit, establish what he does. Maybe he'll outcoach Nick Saban next year. But it's like a death knell when they lose a game. And that's the beauty of, I think, of baseball having a 162 game season or whatever it's going to be, is that each game isn't life and death. But
well, and last I checked, even when your team loses, they don't refund your ticket money.
Yeah, right.
So
it's like
there's some part of the experience that the powers that be have said that there's some value in being there or watching it or seeing it unfold next to your community neighbors and all that sort of stuff. I don't disagree. I think it, if you only ever measure the absolute winning of it all, then it is, you're going to have a lot of disappointment, and that might be just a good philosophy of life. Not all of us, or not most of us, are the absolute best at everything we try to do as we try to do them. Sometimes being second or third or 500th can still be okay in life. But yeah, it's, again, I think you hit the nail on the head, coaching, now we're in this coaching carousel thing, and players are getting, or not players, sorry, new coaches are getting killed or celebrated and have never even been a head coach anywhere. And it's lots of ink and it's lots of clicks and things like that. And but let's give some of them at least a chance to have some results, right? Let's I don't know, a lot of these NFL coaches that are haven't coached before in the NFL, haven't been, or even college coaches. It doesn't seem what lots of players, or I keep saying players, lots of these coaches are getting their first chance. And I can totally, as a fan, say, you pick that guy, and question the choice. But,
right.
But I don't, it always bugs me when they say once you get past that article or that conversation about the choice, then give the guy a chance. Because I was listening to a couple of podcasts recently, and again, I apologize if I'm jumping all over the place, celebrating two college coaches who probably don't get enough credit, and college basketball. And it's Tony Bennett at Virginia and Scott Drew at Baylor.
Yeah.
And, in the case of Bennett, they won the national title just a couple seasons ago. But I don't recall anyone saying that when those hires were made, those were the home run hires that were going to elevate those programs to levels of success they've never had before. I don't think anyone took those hires and said, that's stupid, those guys are useless or whatever. But in the case of Baylor, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, they have been in the top 10, in the top 25, in the last 8 seasons or something like that. They'd only been in the top 25 4 times prior to that in history, for 100-year history. And Bennett is winning more at UVA since he got there than North Carolina, than Duke, than other teams, that when he got the job, I'm sure people said, hey, we don't really actually have realistic expectations of being better than Duke and North Carolina. If you can just kind of keep us a bit better than the kind of the other schools we look at are kind of close to us, then we'll be doing okay. And he, both those guys have elevated it to a level that is quite astonishing. And don't even get me started on Gonzaga and and Mark Few.
Mark Few, right?
Last time, but it's really amazing how much time people spend. Again, not just not the media types, that feeds it, but even just general fans who oh, this is not the guy we were supposed to. I'm the Raptors just won a title with a first-year head coach. He had been an NBA head assistant under Dwayne Casey, and it's actually even more bizarre. I don't know if there's ever been a case where this has got to be true. The Raptors, Dwayne Casey was coach of the year.
Right.
He was by all measures, he's doing an all right job. Gets fired, gets replaced by someone who then wins a title, and that person was on the staff. So you can argue that there's a big chunk of what Nick Nurse is that is tied to Dwayne Casey, because coaches are not out there hiring coaches they want to fight with on the sidelines. They're hiring coaches to, help implement what they see as the vision for the team. So it's like an amazing turn of events.
What I find really bizarre about that one was Dwayne Casey is having a coach of the year kind of season. They fire him. Then he's named coach of the year and replaced by a first-time coach. And what people don't seem to understand is if you've put yourself in the situation as an assistant, you're going to have to be a first-time head coach in the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. You have to have a first-time job somewhere. Well, it shouldn't be with my team. Well, then where? How's he going to get the experience? He's been an OC, he's been a DC, he's been a bench coach, he's been this, he's been that. The next progression is become a head coach. Well, yeah, but he should have been head coach first. Where? You want him to go to college and be a head coach? It's not the same game. It's not the same thing. And people don't seem to get that. You have to get that experience someplace. And you go back to the Tony Bennett and the Scott Drew thing. People don't remember that Tony Bennett was a serviceable NBA player, played under his dad. People don't remember Scott Drew played under his dad at Valparaiso. And they were both kids from coaches. People don't remember Washington State was pretty darn good under Tony Bennett. They don't remember that. People don't remember that Scott Drew learned a lot from his dad and what happened, and understand that the Baylor situation he went into. Let's remember what happened to Baylor before Scott Drew got there, shall we?
It was a dumpster fire.
A dumpster fire. You had a player murdered. That's more than a dumpster fire. So anything you can do is good. But the fact that you brought that from wherever, that's fantastic. And then when you look at what's happened with Tony Bennett, like you said, the best in the ACC. Let's go back to the Terry Holland years, because that's where you have to go back. When he had a guy named Ralph Sampson, 3-time player of the year, who was a stud, but they didn't win. They didn't win at all. They got close, but they didn't win at all. Yeah.
They got really close.
Yeah. Those Georgetown years, Virginia should have been there instead of them, or with them. Let's just put it that way. They should have been on that level.
What's also fascinating about Bennett especially is, when you say things like, hey, I think we're going to win here. But by the way, if we do it, we're going to be doing it in the most boring way possible.
Right.
And I say that tongue in cheek, because I actually if you are I don't say a true fan, I can appreciate, I know not everyone can, a strong defensive game. Like there can be something astounding when you watch and you're like, wow, that team just played a half, and I don't think they got one easy shot the whole half. It's really quite something. And like that game that they just played recently versus Clemson was like, typical of it. And Clemson, I don't know what's up with them, because literally they just got hammered again. And there's some great metrics if you're a UVA fan. Like, look about what Virginia has done versus Clemson the whole time Bennett's been there. Basically, it was a lot of games like the one we saw last weekend. But like he's done it with, as best we know, not any recruiting violations.
Right.
As best we know, I would say good talent, certainly not the best talent in the
not 5-star. No. Right.
Yeah. It's gotten better, it seems. And he's done it also with not having done it right away. They were not this effective. They were not this good in the first, I want to say, the 1, 2, or maybe even 3 years of the program. It took some time for him to say, I got to do what I got to do. This is how we're going to win. Give me a chance to get some guys. And again, so to my mind, it's like, again, Baylor doesn't even have that as part of their history, let alone all the, the challenges. And they're fantastic. They're fantastic to watch. They're in a big time conference. There's no reason to think that this is, going to shuffle off, the next recruiting cycle or whatever. When they were hired, I think people just sort of said, okay. And in 5 years, we'll probably, if they do well, in 5 years, they'll be gone. Or we'll get someone else who we think is like probably a bit better, because maybe, especially in the case of Drew, maybe we just need someone to stabilize things.
Yeah.
And
that's what, yeah, right.
Taking these programs and they're soaring at places where, generally speaking, no one expected them to. No one expected anyone other than maybe Texas to compete with Kansas on a regular basis.
Right. Well, the thing about Tony Bennett is, you understand his dad, Dick, when he was in Wisconsin, they played that, pack line boring ball as well, if you want to call it that. And so he learned that, but also the flip side of that is Tony Bennett as the player, he was a small beep kind of guard, because he couldn't match up to everyone physically. So he was a quick get to this spot, get a shot off quick, and I don't think anyone's going to say he was an elite defender. He was good for what he could do, but he wasn't built to do what his guys do in Wisconsin or at Virginia, which is really funny, because he took the best of both worlds and said, I have that experience. And if anyone tells you that NBA experience means nothing as a coach, is lying, because he took that experience of what it was like. And again, this is what he takes to Virginia. I know what it's like to play against the elite and how to survive. So we're going to take that and survive against the Dukes, the North Carolinas, and actually achieve. And as you said, Scott Drew, it's like, I'm going to recruit. You're going to what? I'm going to recruit at Baylor. How in the heck are you going to do that? From the, as you said, the dumpster fire that was there before, I'm going to get elite players to come to Baylor to play basketball. Really? He did it a completely different way. He went out and beat the bushes and got guys. Now, not saying he can't coach, because he can coach the heck out of a basketball game, but he went out and found guys that were, he's got some 4 or 5 stars on those rosters. He also made some players that were not 4 or 5 stars, better players, but he said, I'm going to go get guys that can compete against the Texas, the Kansas, everybody else in this area, the Oklahomas and everybody. I'm going to go do it. You're like, how did he do that? If anyone else could figure it out, they would do it too. And again, this gives us, we said we weren't going to talk about it, but this is the Mark Few thing. It's like, okay, he had a little help from Dan Monson. I'll give you that. Before he got there, there's something established there, but he's gone and just made it ridiculous. That conference they play in, they were with everybody else. And now they're number 1 in the nation. And the conference is elevated. If you watch some of those WCC games, they're not bad games, but they're nowhere near that level. So if you were to say take Wake Forest and have them play against St. Mary's or one of those teams, I think you get a run for your money if you're Wake Forest, because the conference has elevated itself. Gonzaga has elevated the rest of that conference.
Yeah.
Spokane is insane, but it's interesting the way all that plays out, because again, it's you have to have a bigger picture and a long grind in mind.
I think, to my mind, I think the interesting thing about Gonzaga would be, why won't they be great for the next 20 years? Again, not because I think Mark Few's going to coach that long. I don't think he's going to coach another 20 years. That would be, pretty extreme, although he seems to keep himself in good health. He doesn't seem to age at all.
Doesn't seem to be stressed at all, right?
But I was just I was thinking about this, again, sort of in this context of coaching and when you find the right guy, how do you know if you have the right guy? How do you give this person enough time to show whether they're the right guy? I think that's also a key part of it. But then I also think about Gonzaga, juxtaposed to Kentucky, which is having one of their all-time worst seasons. If I'm now an elite prospect, why wouldn't I want to go to Gonzaga? Right. They win all the time. Their top guys go to the NBA. Their players seem to get better while they're there. And again, that's Kentucky's like the what's it called, the flashpoint for the prospect system and how do you know and all that sort of stuff. But like the Zags, they plucked Jalen Suggs out of Minnesota of all places. He's having an amazing freshman season. He probably, as far as I know, because I'm not a high school recruiting expert, probably could have literally gone to any school he wanted.
Right.
He was that kind of prospect. And I assume he's going to go pro after this season. It seems logical. So like, I don't think that they would ever get to the point that they're going to recruit 5 of those guys at once the way that Kentucky likes to. But if the talent's dipping a little bit, why not get 2? When you can literally get the right, if you're refined to the point that you can get the right 2.
And they've also figured out, better than most, the transfer system as well. This guy can play, but he's not getting utilized where he's at. Not that he's unhappy, which is a key. He's playing where he was. And I'm going to forget his name, the guard that came out of Minnesota, who I don't remember at Minnesota, but I know that he played while he was in Minnesota. With the hyphenated last name a couple of years ago. It's like, this guy can play. He just doesn't fit there. Something Williams, I think is what it was, I believe. But
is that Nigel Goss-Williams? Is that the guy?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Right, yeah, right. And he can play. He's just not being as efficient as he can be there. We recognize that. Come on over. They find those guys. They don't have to find those guys as much as they used to, but they find those guys.
Yeah.
And they recruit. And as you said, now they can recruit nationwide. They're on national television often enough, not every game, but often enough that they can compete with the Kentuckys and the Dukes and North Carolinas, the world, Kansas that way. They go make a deep tournament run. They're ranked. Like I said, guys go to the NBA. Yeah, why wouldn't it sustain for the next 20 years? I have no idea why not.
No, I think I think it's gonna be really interesting again. Like, Kentucky's failures this year and reaction to it all is going to, I think, make it interesting when these so-called like elite collections of talent, because and you hear, if you watch a Raptors telecast, you hear it all the time because we've got Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam in our starting lineup, or big time money. And what Leo Rautins, if anyone remembers that name,
Leo,
Syracuse, played a bit in the NBA. What he always says on the broadcast is like, you got to go somewhere where you can actually play, where your talents are going to be featured. So yeah, if like, it's not that playing at Kentucky is a bad thing in and of itself, or at North Carolina is a bad thing in and of itself, but if everyone who comes in actually plays the way they're supposed to, how are you going to stand out? And whereas, and again, it's in those cases of Pascal and Fred, it's a little bit different situation, but like, why someone wouldn't want to go to a place where they're part of a 2-man recruiting class instead of an 8-man recruiting class. The path to play is there, like, because if you can play, and the NBA is the easiest one, they'll find you. There's like Damian Lillard, played at Weber State, and I don't know the whole Damian Lillard story, but like, if you're good enough, it's hard to hide.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the perfect thing, Leo Rautins. Leo Rautins didn't start at Syracuse. Leo Rautins transferred to Syracuse. And I don't think people recall that. Leo Rautins wasn't, he was a transfer to Syracuse. So it's, he went someplace where he could get his start. If I remember correctly, I think that's right. And he transferred to Syracuse. I just found that out a couple of years ago. So understanding that that's the way it works, you find what you can find. And again, this is the idea of, I used to think that transfers were bad guys. I always thought that, well, he just can't fit in, because I would never do that. He didn't show loyalty to the team and this and that. It's different now. It's much different now. You go to where you can go, and because the rules allow it to be opened up, if you find a better fit, go find a better fit. It's not. There's no shame in that now. I used to think there was.
I looked it up while we were talking. Leo Rautins did play his first season at Minnesota.
Yeah, and who knew?
That I did not know, because even though I see him on TV almost every night, like he did one season. He did one season there. I'm looking at this, for the first time. Scored 8 points a game, so it's not as if he
Yeah.
was, not seeing any time. But he transferred to Syracuse, and his numbers are not even like all that, for a guy who made the NBA, and it's not the first. Like, his numbers at Syracuse were not otherworldly. He averaged 14 points and 6 assists as a senior, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 14 points as a senior. So
But he filled
on a
up the
good
stat
Syracuse
line.
team.
Yeah. Yeah. And he
Yeah.
filled up a stat line, right? And okay, so here's today's lesson, boys and girls. Every day is a good thing when you've learned something you didn't know before. And he learned about Leo Rounds. But yeah,
it's just interesting. Like again, and he says it, again, maybe because he doesn't usually connect it to his own experience, but like you got to go somewhere where you can actually play, and by a combination of playing like because Cal is getting so much heat now. Like the last comment that people were making, we're killing him for was now he's making comments saying, well, if I bench some of these guys that were expected to be stars, then I'm going to lose them forever because they have too much emotional fragility to overcome it, which I get. But that flies, opposite of what he normally says, which is, hey, if you're coming here, you are you're going to be having the best against the best. And if you can't hack it, that's on you. I'm going to give you the opportunity, where, our scrimmages are better, have featured more talent NBA players than, NBA games kind of thing. Like, and there's been lots of great coaches that have famously trumpeted that competition thing. Pete Carroll does it all the time. But if you're now saying, well, I can't make these choices because this guy is a little bit too soft emotionally, then your competition is becoming bunk. Like it's
here's and I'm glad because I was getting ready to go to that. Here's what Cal has done. Let's go back a little bit. When he was at UMass, and he had Lou Rowe and Dante Bright and Dana Dingle and those guys, and Carmelo Trevioso, and those
Marcus
were
Camby.
not hot. Yeah, right. Those were not highly recruited players other than Marcus Camby. That's where I was going to go. Marcus Camby, they went, we can get Marcus Camby, and wow, we have a guy that's now an NBA talent. No one's going to say Lou Rowe is going to be that kind of stud, right? So then when he gets to Memphis, he kind of flipped a little bit, like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to see if I can get some studs, but I'm still going to get the Joey Dorseys of the world that no one else really was going out to get and turn him into a powerlifting beast, When he went to Kentucky, now it's like, okay, I've got to one-up Pitino. That's the first thing. I've got to do better than Pitino did there and what Pitino ends up doing at Louisville. And you start bringing in these guys and bringing in these guys. And now you've created a cycle that you can't break. Because if you have 4 one-and-dones on a roster, you've got to recruit more guys the next year and the next year and the next year. It's a never-ending recruiting cycle. And now there is that, and I know it's partly how you treat it, but there's that perception of the recruits and like, I'm coming in a position where they came and got me because I'm a stud. They came and got me because I am going to be a one-and-done NBA star. I have $1 million contract. All I got to do is get through this year. And they recruited 7 or 8 of us. We're all going to make it one way or another. And I believe that instead of recruiting tough guys, which it's easy to tell if there's a tough guy out there, they've recruited the future. And the guys aren't seeing what it takes to get to the future because they've already think they've achieved that by getting recruited by Kentucky. And so the thing that I heard Cal say earlier in the season, like, you want us to have a great season, but you also wanted us to play tougher competition. Well, when we play tougher competition early in the season, we're not that good yet. These guys aren't basketball players yet. They're prospects. They weren't basketball players in high school. They were AAU players. They were prospects. They look good on the court, as Vital used to call them, all airport team. They look good showing up. We haven't made them basketball players yet. So we go out and play Kansas early in the season. Guess what? We're supposed to lose that game. And of course, you're saying if it's an all-NBA, future all-NBA team, how are they losing games? Well, because they're not that good yet. But now he's got to question their toughness. Well, they don't have any toughness. So what do? You get fragility. Well, coaches yelling at me. Coaches have never yelled at them in their lives. You were 6'10" in 8th grade. There's no coach that ever yelled at you. And I know that prospect. I've seen those prospects. Coach never made you work hard because you still got on the floor. If you dogged it through line drills, they didn't say, well, you're not playing next week. You can't do that. They're going to play. And that's where we're stuck at. And again, that's where Tony Bennett and a Scott Drew and a Mark Few and several others, like, I don't have to worry about that. I went out and find the tough kids. I'm going to go out and find somebody who's used to that, who's used to being coached, who's used to being ridden a little bit harder.
Not owning it enough, because I'm not like, basketball can be a pretty simple game. And if your players are actually perceived to be, and maybe in reality are taller, faster, stronger, than the other teams, and like, you can't tell me that, some of the teams they lost to have quote unquote better players,
right,
more experience. You can go that way how you want, but I think that they're like, this is the team that you created, and the fact that they're not good enough, in the most obvious way, which is they lose, and in many cases they're losing, not at the buzzer, they're losing games that they are not even in,
right,
to speaks to your fact that you either don't know how to construct a roster, which I think is perhaps quite true,
right.
and you don't know how to coach them up as well as you thought you did, and I think this is the piece that you have to be willing to say too, maybe your evaluative process is off. Right?
Yeah.
They're if you think about it in the simple terms of, every once in a while, the number one pick in every sport winds up being a total bust, despite all the efforts that go into that one selection, the fact that you may be saying, hey, we don't know how to evaluate. We got to look at everything we're doing in terms of how we evaluate kids, because we just took a group of 5 or 7 of them or whatever it was, and it seems like not one of them is what we thought.
Well,
and that's, I think, the piece that he has to earn. So when he, not to try to cut you off, when he starts pinning it on the schedule and not being ready, that works for the last 2 minutes of a game when, a more experienced team, made some free throws, or just had that sort of that right stuff of just those
right.
are guys who have played together before. That shouldn't happen when you're recruiting the type of talent he thinks he has. And it's 3 minutes into a game and nobody can make a 3-point shot.
Here's what I think is part of the problem. And it's morons like me to get on the air and say they know more than they know. So you have people that now call themselves recruiting gurus. And they come up with their list. And they say, this is who should go here. Here's a 5-star. Here's a blue chip, all that. I've seen them play this and I've done that. And they're doing the recruiting for the programs now. So if you go out and you sign three stars and no 5 stars, you had a lousy recruiting season, and they're going to use that against you as you move forward. Their recruiting is awful. They didn't get any 5 stars. They didn't get any blue chips. They didn't get anybody they're supposed to get. And then, the kid does the thing where he takes the hat off, puts a hat on, and all that. That's a spectacle now. What they don't do, some of them, not all of them, what they don't do is actually recruit for themselves. And again, when we're talking about a Tony Bennett or a Mark Few, we're going to recruit who works for us. We're going to recruit who works for everybody else. We're going to recruit for whomever we need for our program. And not saying the Calipari's gotten lazy, but part of that laziness of that is, I've got McDonald's All-Americans, I've got 5 stars, and I've got, all across the board. Doesn't mean they can play. It just means that you got the guys that everyone else said you should have got. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. I look at and I did the NBA draft lottery video. I finally got it finished and posted it last week.
But I think I think the greatest though equalizer for that though is winning, because
sure.
And football is the best example, because as Alabama at the top of that pyramid, and they recruit better than anybody else. And what is also obvious is that the Saban method, let's just call it that, gets the most out of those recruits. And since he's been there, they've literally won the championship. Not just had great seasons, but won the championship about as often as they haven't. But when you compare what is going on at Clemson, it's not that they're not getting excellent recruits, because they are, but they're not number 2 most of the years, and they're not number 3 most of the years. They're getting a high enough level of recruits and being strategic, because they seem to have a good knack for finding the right quarterbacks from year to year, that kind of thing. And so that's why I said that's what I think is the most interesting part about, again, what's happening with Kentucky. The fan base wants to win. So if Cal says, what the right makeup is to have not 5 5-stars, but 2 5-stars, 3 4-stars, a walk on a train, like whatever it happens to be, whatever is the right makeup, they just want to win. So if that's the way you win, and you say to yourselves, hey, we're walking away from this super talented player because it's just not going to work. It's just like we've seen there, like that's all they want. I totally agree with you that there's this crush of energy around who did you get and how are they going to get, and we got to do like this. But the programs that win, they're okay with that. Like Bennett's a good example. Like he's not, I assume, because I haven't followed it, I assume he does not have the best recruiting class in the ACC coming into this season.
No. Probably
isn't lined up to have the best one next year either. But he's won more conference titles than any other team has, I think, over the last 7 years. So that their strategy, or whether it's by choice or by necessity, is like, hey, if we feel like we're competing, and then we can let a guy slide, we can let a guy go, we can figure it out. Like I think that I find is like it's this crutch of, if all you want to do is hire good recruiters and winning doesn't matter, that's fine, but admit it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And this is kind of disingenuous of him to say that. And again, Tony Bennett would take a group of 5-stars if he got them, if they fit what he wanted to do. But he also knows who he wants on his roster. And as you said, you get all these high-profile players, and it transfers to the NBA, the NHL, everything. My video that we finally finished, I'm selfless plug, sorry about that, is how many number 1 overall picks in the NBA draft lottery era since 1985 have won a title with the team that drafted 3.
So LeBron,
since 1985. No, LeBron doesn't count. LeBron doesn't count because he left. Okay. Yeah, he left. So actually, with the team,
I want to see if I can name them. I'm trying to think.
Okay.
Number 1 overall picks who won a title with the team that drafted them
without going someplace.
Olajuwon.
The year before the lottery. He was the year before the lottery. He was in '84.
Oh, okay.
The first lottery pick was Patrick Ewing.
But he would have qualified, right? He was the first overall.
He would have qualified. Yeah, he would have been one of them.
First one's I'm trying to think of who's the number 1 overall pick.
Okay, while you're thinking that, I'll give you the 10 years previous to that, going back from '84 to '74. There was Bill Walton, there was Magic Johnson, James Worthy, and Olajuwon. So there were 4 in that 10-year span who were the number 1 pick. In the 35-year span after that, there were only
3. And LeBron doesn't count because he left Cleveland and then came back to Cleveland.
Right.
Trying to think.
But you use Cleveland right because they had 3 number 1 picks in 4 years. So you have the Cleveland part right. You just have to figure out which one of those guys it was. That's one of them.
The funny thing
that adds to it.
Bulls teams didn't have one of those guys who was the number 1 pick. And
if it helps any, the 2 of them were from one team, and then one of them was from the Cleveland.
Sorry. So you're right. San Antonio.
Mm-hmm. So you have David Robinson,
and
Duncan. Then Tim Duncan.
Okay.
And then Kyrie Irving with the Cleveland. Right. With Cleveland. Right.
Okay. So
now, if David Robinson hadn't got hurt, and then they bottomed out that year, and they were able to draft Tim Duncan, it's kind of doubtful that David Robinson would have got one.
Sure.
But if
Oh, yeah.
LeBron had left and then come back to Cleveland, I don't think Kyrie Irving would have gone. Now that's speculation. So I really say that it's only one in reality, because Tim Duncan may have done it without anybody else. I don't know. But then you
No,
look at
well, I think what it comes down to on that piece too is that, like what often happens, there's always a number one pick. They're not always a player worthy of being the number one pick, right?
right, exactly.
So
Or
the fact
circumstances change. Like the Magic drafted Shaquille O'Neal, and then the next year they had Chris Webber. Well, they decided not to keep both of them, so they shipped Chris Webber off and brought in Penny Hardaway. Okay, cool. Then they have that configuration for a few years, and then Shaquille leaves. So he wins a title. He just doesn't win it with Orlando. Last year you had the Lakers win, and that had LeBron, Dwight Howard, and Anthony Davis. 3 number one picks overall, just not with the team that drafted him. And what I got out of that was, one, your evaluation process is ridiculous, because sometimes you're evaluating guys that just can't play. Like you said, sometimes they don't deserve to be number one. But also, if you go through the lottery, through 7 to 14 or whatever it is now. But it's more important to be the GM that says, now I've watched these guys play in the NBA, and now I'm going to go get Chauncey Billups or Rasheed Wallace or this guy or that guy. Drafting them doesn't help. Finding when they can actually play and going and picking them off other rosters helps. Because the whole thing now, again, since 1985, the number of lottery picks that have won a title, 16. That's also not a good percentage. And if you take away the Golden State run of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Harrison Barnes, it's down to 13. So of guys that were really key contributors to that team winning a title. Robert Horry, okay, you can say he's a key contributor with Houston, but he wasn't the main guy. Darko Milicic barely played for Detroit. And then the ones that really are weird, like Kobe Bryant, wasn't really drafted by the Lakers. That was a draft day trade. And Scottie Pippen was drafted by Seattle for the draft day trade. So those are the two that have the most rings. But again, they were later round pick or later in the lottery. So, and not to keep pushing my own little video that I did, but the idea is that, when you evaluate for yourself, you're better than when you evaluate by committee or by someone like me saying, well, this guy's a blue chipper. I saw him play against blah, blah, and that's what you do. Now, the fan base will be upset if you don't get the guy, but the results may change. Again, like you said, Tony Bennett isn't necessarily getting all the blue chippers, but who's winning the ACC every year now? Not the Dukes and the North Carolinas. And they're also some of those guys who go to NC State and the blah, 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 blah. Who's winning? That's the key. Are you a better team?
It would be interesting. I don't know the backstory on it, like other than the fact that the David Robinson injury, killed the team. So they wound up having the number one pick and drafted Tim Duncan. Did they think they were drafting Robinson's replacement? Or did they think they were drafting this ultimate complementary player to go with it? Because you're talking about 2 7-footers, granted at a time when playing with more size was more common. But I could have, you could easily say, maybe there was someone in the room who are saying, well, this Robinson injury doesn't look great. And, maybe now's the time to, find the replacement the way that some guy, like you've got players in the NFL, right? They drafted hypothetically Aaron Rodgers' replacement in the first round this year.
Right.
It's a little bit of a different scenario because obviously Tim Duncan and David Robinson can be on the floor at the same time. You can't play 2 quarterbacks at once, but
right.
It would be really interesting to have been a fly on the wall when that decision was made, not in the evaluation whether Tim Duncan was the best player to take, but whether it was the best player to take for them at that time. And did they say again, like, hey, we think that, Robinson's best days might be behind him. It takes a little while for a center to develop. So let's get a guy. And in 2 years, we'll still have the best center in the game, but it'll be a different guy than what we had when we had the previous best center in the game, kind of thing. It just would be interesting to know how that kind of came to be.
Well, let me give you just a brief little background to that. Okay, so Tim Duncan goes number 1, right? Keith Van Horn went number 2. Chauncey Billups at number 3, Antonio Daniels number 4, Tony Battie number 5. And then in there you had Ron Mercer, Tracy McGrady with number 9, and that's about Austin Crozier goes number 12. So in that draft, now we're looking at what happened afterwards. I would think that the only other player that you would have considered taking number 1 due to the end of his college career would have been Keith Van Horn. So, that's that's the guy that was there. Consensus college player of the year was Tim Duncan. I don't know that there's anybody else that you would have said, whoever was drafting number 1. Now, granted, you say, well, if David Robinson's going to be healthy, is Tim Duncan a power forward or a center? Maybe we're better off going for somebody else, or maybe trading down and getting Chauncey Billups. But everyone else had question marks because Duncan played in the ACC, Van Horn was at Utah, Chauncey Billups was at Colorado, Antonio Daniels was at Bowling Green, Tony Battie was at Texas Tech. You didn't have the blue chippers out there during that draft. And who are you going to take number 1? So it kind of was a perfect storm in that sense. At least that's my take on it. And again,
it worked out.
It worked out perfectly for them. Yeah.
It'd be it's the kind, and I think that the great part about that story is almost like how no one would do that now. No one would say, if we already have like an established 7-footer all-star level kind of player at that size, but we should still get a second one, even though you're talking about 2 players that are Hall of Fame players, super athletic for that size and that ability, super skilled, coachable, like they're basically like coaches' dreams kind of a thing. But it's one of those situations that people just wouldn't do now.
The only way you do it is if you had like a Porzingis or somebody who's really a perimeter player, even though he's 7 foot tall. He can play interior defense, get rebounds, but on offense, he's going to be out at the 3-point line. That's the only way you can do it now, because now it's more positionless. And you're going to take, is he one of the best players I can put on the floor? But you're not looking at, now we've established that interior presence. So yeah, it's a whole different way of looking at the game now. And that kind of, segues back to the segue from before, the other segue of what are we looking at as far as what we put on the floor, we put on the field, we put on the court. The skills that we have or do not have, I think maybe is even more important. Now, we were talking off air about wide receivers that can't catch, but can run a 4.3 and look good at the combine. We were talking about, guys, left-handed batters that can't hit to the left side of the field when the shift is 8 guys on one side of the field. How does he not get on base? We were talking about basketball players that are shooting less from the foul line than they are from the field. How do you make the NBA? Tennis players who can't get a first serve in. What? Golfers that can't putt. But these are it would almost be like saying a stock car driver that couldn't turn left. What do you do? This is the essence of what you do. He doesn't know how to use the brake. It's like, how do these guys make it into the league or leagues? I guess you should say. I'm baffled by that, and yet we're still plunking down our money to watch it. But again, I don't want to say that it's different game now than when we grew up. But I'm not going to say it's better or worse. It's just different, and it's hard to get used to when you see guys that just airmail throw from the outfield over the catcher and hit the backstop when he missed 3 cutoff men and 2 runs score and more guys move into scoring position. How does he get to play the rest of the game or at least start the next game? I had coaches in grade school that would have said, go sit down, put in Johnny. You're supposed to hit the cutoff man. Well, we thought I could throw him out. You're not supposed to throw him out. You're supposed to hit the cutoff man. So I don't know. As we were talking about the lack of the minor leagues or the minor leagues going away, the G League and all of that, are we going to start, do we have to get used to a lack of fundamentals or lesser fundamentals and just observe the play on the field?
Oof. Is that a final topic of the day?
Yeah, let's rant a little bit.
You know what, I think the answer to that is unfortunately yes. And I say that on two fundamental levels. One is there's just so much inventory out there, right? So like if we were
Right.
living in a world where there were just 6 professional basketball teams, that kind of a thing, that obviously like we would have nothing but the elite of the elite of the elite of the elite. And at that level, you tend to have the combination of people who are the physical freaks that have hit the genetic lotteries in terms of what they can do, but also have the mental acuity and the dedication to their craft to always be refining their game. A classic case, if you'd watched the Bucks game last night when the LeBron beat the Bucks in Milwaukee, he had a season high in points. He is not the same player that he was when he entered the league, even though, again, that notion of like the physical traits that he has, those have never changed. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, but his ability to learn and refine the game has been super impressive for a guy who came in, who probably could have had the same length of career, maybe not the same success, but the same length of a career, even if he had never gotten better by one iota.
Right.
So I think that like we live in a world where just the pure breadth of the professional sports landscape means that there's going to be people who are going to be enticed by a particular physical skill and hope that it gets rounded out with the quote fundamentals that we think all players should have. I think it's also like it's also a byproduct of the system that we use, to identify players. And like it's the AAU in basketball, it's the how hard can you throw it, competition at a baseball tournament or something like that. Not the, well, who's the best player on your team? That kid, really? But he only bats 6th, and he's not the tallest guy, and he's not the fastest. Yeah, but he never makes a mistake. And when we need a single, he find, like those kinds of things, because those kinds of things do matter for winning. That kid may or may not, develop over time to become even better, or he may just be at that level, which is whatever you need, coach, I can give it to you, kind of a thing. And I think that it becomes sort of lost, because the best way to distinguish yourself these days in a sort of click they stand out, and those people get opportunities. And because that opportunity is attached to some coach or GM, hopefully not losing their job, they get opportunity after opportunity.
Right.
And it trickles into what we see on TV. Like there are, which is why I think that the cases of, who's an example of Peyton Pritchard, who played 4 years at Oregon, stepped onto the Boston Celtics. I don't know what his long-term career is going to be, but I have a hunch that you could probably go his whole 15-year career and you'd say he never took a bad shot. Didn't make all the shots because he's not,
right. He's not perfect, but
have never learned the game. They've just been fundamentals kind of covered. Then that's what we're gonna have. That's what we're gonna have.
well, you see, well, you see the problems that exist because of, I don't know. We were talking about guys that can't make foul shots. That's what you do. That's your job. How can you not do that? Are you putting the effort in? Are you putting the time in? Maybe, maybe not. Like, guys can't hit the cutoff man. What are you doing during practice? Are you practicing that? So again, maybe the game is evaluated and the value of it's different. So I don't know. Well, let's leave it at that, because that was the rant that we had, and I think that's something we can recover again. There's so many things else we can go through.
When we were talking off air.
Well, as I evaluated the rant, I realized we could have got ourselves in trouble with that rant. So
Fair enough. No, happy to
so
leave it there.
yeah,
It was a
let's leave it there.
more games,
Again,
so there'll be more stuff
Matt,
to talk about.
yeah, and we're starting to get the internet gremlins again. So it's been great talking to you again. I can't wait to do it again. This is fantastic. If you have any information you want to leave to people, social media or whatever, please drop that, as we say now.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that, like, in addition to coming on the air with you every once in a while, like, I also do some writing in different spots of the web. So one thing that's new for me is I'm now writing for bettingnews.com. So if you're looking for NBA previews and things like that, please check it out. But yeah, it's good to see you, good to talk with you. And like I said, there'll be more games tomorrow, some more stuff to talk about next time.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.